I wanted to ask a little bit about the global picture. Obviously, we're talking about mobile and being the wave of the future here. One of the reasons is people feel that way is because it's so prevalent and so prominent in overseas and so many other markets. And of course, there are local factors that deal with that. Like, for instance, in Japan, people were much more willing to get on their devices and do things because they have these insanely long rides on the commuter trains to get home and to get into work in the morning. So there was a market where people were very eager to use that time for something. Can you talk a little bit about, are there any kind of global learnings in the SOMO, LOMO, Slomo, Shlomo area that you can share, or that you can try to extrapolate as to the U.S. market?
Well, from my perspective, because I do look at our mobile strategies and our mobile capability globally, and when you start to do that, every time you double-click down into a different region, the picture is different. The ecosystem is different, consumers are different, how consumers use their mobile device, the mobile ecosystem is different. And so once you double-click into these different regions, the types of strategies that you would execute become different. How we would execute here in North America is very different than how we would execute in many different Asian countries. I mean, again, it gets different at a country level when you look at Asia. LATAM, Middle East and Africa. So each one of these have different processes and different ways of looking at it. I think mobile is relevant in all of them, but in different ways. Middle East, you may be looking, or Africa, you may be looking at more of a feature phone, which is more of a basic phone type of strategy. So you're not going to have these rich media, smartphone type of strategies. But still, mobile is incredibly relevant. It's the first screen for many consumers there. And if you're thinking about growth opportunities, emerging markets is where you need to look for the next 5 to 10 years and where your growth is coming from. And so having these strategies that maybe take a step back and look at SMS as a core part of a strategy in these markets is something that as global marketers we have to do, and you need to look at those things. And so that's, I think, the biggest takeaway is that there is not a silver bullet. Here's the thing that we need to do as a company or as a brand, and we can apply that globally. And that's part of the slow uptick, and we kind of touched on a key point earlier, is that a lot of the slow process now is the marketers getting up to speed on what can be done, being comfortable with the fragmentation that exists in the marketplace right now, being comfortable with the privacy issues and having to think about those things as you think about the user experience and how you collect data and what you do with it. And it becomes challenging when you look at it from a global perspective because you will have multiple different strategies and plans to execute across the world.
Anybody else want to grab that one?
You know, one thing I would say is it gets very complex very quickly, and we have to deal with that a lot. But one minor frustration I have, if I can turn this into a mini therapeutic session.
We'll need a couch instead of a chair, but go ahead.
Is that, so I love our technology partners. I mean, they wow me every day, and we learn from them a lot. But I'm surprised how many of them don't allow for geo-targeting. And I'm going to talk about two different things and their contradictions. So to give you an example, from our Twitter handle, we do a lot of marketing, we engage with our consumers, but we can't geo-target there. We do a massive Foursquare program, really excited, really successful. But guess what? And this is a little more off the record. Well, I suppose it doesn't really matter.
Oh, go ahead. It's not like we're in a building that's owned by a newspaper.
I know, yeah. But it was a massive success in the US. It was designed as a US program, so we checked that box. But it was also a very big success in the Far East. And I have no idea why. It wasn't targeted towards the Far East in any way. But Foursquare didn't segment by the US itself. The way we were promoting it on Twitter and through some of our platforms, we had no way of segmenting it. It was unintentionally global in a sense.
But there were like rewards and prizes. But what did the fine print say? Not the continental U.S. only.
So the prizes piece didn't carry. But in terms of getting the Pepsi summertime badge, you absolutely could get it anywhere in the world. So it was definitely unintentionally US. I mean, I'm taking it, I love it, and I'm putting it in the global campaign category. But that's sort of one messy side to it. On the flip side, and something else I feel we have to think about, and are just beginning to start to understand, is our political boundaries and the way we define the world as marketers is increasingly more and more out of sync with the way our consumers do. I look at a news feed, of my friends or my own news feed or a regular consumer, and that news feed in Facebook or that stream in Twitter is not geographically controlled. It's not location controlled. Their influences, however much geo-targeting I may do, a friend of theirs may tell them about the Foursquare program sitting in Indonesia or something like that. They're not working in the same geographic constraints that we are, and we need to understand the dynamics of what those new boundaries are and how they work.
Whereas the corporations and the ad agencies and the media companies all have or divisions like EMEA, Europe, Middle East, Africa, which were set up 40, 50, 60 years ago, and they put countries into these categories regardless of what's happening now.
Yeah, it doesn't work that neatly in digital anymore by any means.
So a local campaign is a global. You're saying that your local campaign in that the U.S. was the local area, it became a global campaign.
Unintentionally.
Unintentionally.
Yeah.
I hope you all are thinking about questions, because we're going to be yakking up here for about another 10, 15 minutes, and then we're going to open it up to the questions for the audience. So we're going to ask a couple more general questions of our panel. I'd like to ask about media partners and who you are hooking up with in this in the Lomo, Somolo, slow-mo area, and what are you learning together, or are they like banging on your door trying to get you to do things that are too esoteric and too cutting edge in these early days, or how does that work? Pepper, yeah, if you want to start.
So we have a lot of fantastic media partners, and I'd kind of put them in a couple different categories. One would be the platforms themselves, and we have a very large strategic relationship with Facebook that is really wonderful, and we learn a lot about how to target on their platform and how to build large-scale efforts by working through them as a media partner. And then we work with a lot of other smaller, more specialized vendors, like a Social Code, who is part of the New York Times, Washington Post family here, 33 Across, GraphFX, who are all fantastic at helping us really target very, very smartly and develop lookalike modeling and do a lot more of the very specialized work in Facebook and across the web that help us find people who look like our card members, for example. If we are trying to target, we know you're a fan of us on Facebook, but how can we find people who look like you either on Facebook or across the web to make our media a lot more efficient? And so I think it's been very interesting. We challenge them, but they also teach us a lot because this is all evolving. And from a privacy standpoint, Sarah, to go back to your earlier question, these are things that I think we have to be mindful of so that it doesn't get too creepy. You balance the creepy with the ability to be very, very efficient with your media.
So we, in our portfolio, I would also mention that our partnership with Facebook has come a long way in helping both educate us about what consumer behavior is and how the use of the platform should inform our marketing. We've also worked very closely with a number of big portals to understand how their products are evolving and to try out new things with them as kind of traffic aggregators, how valuable they can be in terms of the new things that they're testing, giving us a platform to both do something innovative and do it in front of a large audience where the reach is expressed. We've also, I'll mention, among some of the partnerships we've had in mobile and testing some new things, Shopkick has been a key partner of ours in terms of kind of the gamification of shopping experiences. We haven't launched a game with Zynga, we haven't done that sort of thing, but we are intrigued by this idea of points for check-in and scanning offers and observing, in particular, as their user base is very young, how we're able to communicate and create experiences that are different customers that have been a little trickier for us to capture. So that's a partner.
So there isn't like a Macy'sville yet, or?
Not yet. No, not yet. Though we've kicked around the idea, of course. Everybody
It's like
has.
you'd do like what? You'd have your own Macy's and you'd like stock it with merchandise, and then little tiny customers would come in, and then if you had the wrong merchandise stocked in the shelves, you would go bankrupt. And
of course, they'd all be buying with their Amex card.
Itsy bitsy tiny little Amex card.
Everything Pepsi, exactly.
We just created the next new thing here.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I mean, I also think a lot of this has to do with entertainment value, and we look, as much as we are a retail brand and we're selling products that people need and want, we also look at all the entertainment properties that Macy's has. And you're joking about how shopping is this entertaining aspect, but whether it's our Thanksgiving Day parade or the fireworks or Fashions Night Out or Glamorama or all the different events that we have throughout the year, figuring out how those come into play, and then how our media partners help take things that are happening in our stores or for a relatively small group of people and extend their reach pretty substantially.
And then you're in brand and entertainment too. You do that annual special on CBS, the Yes Virginia. There is a Santa Claus animated special that you've done for a couple of years now. So there is an entertainment component to what you're doing. Yeah, yeah. Media partners are the guys? I mean, obviously Microsoft, everybody should say they're partnering with Microsoft, right? No? Yes?
Well, yeah, and I...
Don't tell me you're media agnostic on that issue.
Well, to be honest, it's difficult for us to find media partners in this space that have the scale that we need in terms of the plans that we put together and where we need to achieve. That said, where we've had great success, honestly, it has been with our own platforms. To give an example, we had a new game title launch, which we created a Mo Solo app, if you will, a game that would be a companion to the game before when it launched. So for this, it was launched in the UK. The UK was divided up into territories. It was for the Fable 3 launch. The app was called Kingmaker, and you were able to go to different parts of the city and claim that part of the city or the area for either the Rebel or the Royals, for anybody that's a gamer who knows that game. And through these check-ins, you were able to gain points, which you were then able to transfer into Xbox Live to use in the game when the game actually launched. And we were able to integrate that with our print advertising, with our social, with Twitter and Facebook. The more you shared it, the more you got involved with it, the more points that you would get, and you could use those points again to buy merchandise in the game.
And that was all done in-house?
Yes.
Internally? You
yes,
worked all
with
that
our
out
with our ad agency, but it was using, because we had such
Which
loyal
agency?
folks.
Might as well get a...
McCann Erickson.
Okay.
And because of that brand loyalty and the platform we already had, and integrating it with those other traditional and digital forms and social forms, we had great success. And the game launched #1 amidst probably 20 other games that launched in the same time period, when previously the sentiment for the previous version of the game was not that positive. So we were able to reverse that and actually come back very strong using that particular that strategy. And so in that case, I would say that we were our own media partner, and then integrating that with the Facebook, Twitter, I sound like my grandma. Facebook and Twitter and our traditional formats really was successful for us.
As long as you don't say my face, like my mother did.
I'll just mention a few things now. I won't go into the Facebook. I'll just to make you feel better.
Thank you. I'm mobile, not social.
So, similarly, we absolutely work with a lot of different media partners. But what's interesting, what we're finding as being most important to us is identifying and working with those partners that allow us to do things that enhance a consumer's experience in pop culture or in the physical world or in the digital world. So for example, we are anchor sponsors for the X Factors I mentioned earlier. But we're doing a lot digitally. Some things are launching tomorrow, and we have this big digital engagement platform launching the week after, which is all about amping up that X Factor experience. So it's not about pushing our own message directly, but we believe when we add greater value to the entertainment experience in ways that are in cue or in sync with our own brand values, we get a lot more credit for it. So we look for those partners, whether they're media companies or technology companies, that allow us and give us the opportunity to really collaborate tightly.
So your partner in that case is Fox, or is there some agencies involved, or how does that work?
So it's absolutely Fox, it's anchor partner. It's them also giving us access to the producers of the show.
All right, and then it's that company that Simon, was it Simon's, Fremantle and 19, or is that the...
Psycho.
Psycho?
Yes.
Simon's company's named Psycho? Is that?
It is.
Is anyone surprised by that, or?
Yeah, so it's all of them together, and then in this case, what we're doing is we're basically building this web experience that it's sort of like a Twitter meets a turntable, and it sits on top of Twitter, all about the show, and that's going to launch in 2 weeks' time. But it enhances the viewing experience in a very exciting way. So that's how we can help.
All right.
Yeah.
Last question for the panel before we throw it open to all you very lovely people is to ask them what is keeping them up at night these days, these nights. What do you worry? What worries you in this mo, slow mo, homo space?
I think for us, it's how we can test smartly. We get inundated by new vendors, new ideas, new technologies, new companies, and they're all fantastic. How do we pick and choose, given our limited resources, the right things to do that are going to either advance our learning agenda, so even if it's a small scale, we can apply it to other things that we're doing to get the scale that we really need to have impact on our business, or it's something that is so out of the gate going to get us the kind of reach that we really need. And it's a challenge, and I think it's what makes my job really exciting, because I get to talk to really smart, innovative people all day long, but it's that filtering and figuring out where to apply ourselves that is the hardest thing. That and my pit bull, who insists on sleeping with me many nights and snores very loudly.
So Stuart, you hit on my nerve, which is this millennial customer, and really, are we being differentiated enough? Are we being forward enough? Are we taking enough risks to attract the customer who may be 22 right now, but when she gets to be 30 or 35 and she's making some of the decisions that we think we understand of customers at that life stage, how differently she will approach shopping at Macy's when she gets to be what we would qualify as our core customer right now. And having to rethink the whole model of how we market to someone who's experiencing the world so differently right now. And so pushing ourselves as marketers and as retailers to really shift our thinking so dramatically about how, and a lot of it then ends up being informed by social and mobile and local, as opposed to using those as tactics, using those as the information that creates a different perception of the customer.
So on one hand, again, like you said before, you want to look up to date and hip with this customer, but at the same time, you don't want to look like grandma trying to dance the Macarena at the bar mitzvah, kind of a.
Well, and it's what do we do with it now, but also how, as we're forecasting 3, 5, 10 years down the road, how do we prepare ourselves for, we think we know how to market to a 35 to 45-year-old, but who that person is in 10 years is going to be someone completely different than who it is right now.
And I also understand that from what I've been trying to gather is that a lot of there's been a lot of surprising transactions, or there's been a lot of customers coming in to Macy's around the country who are in their 20s for the first time in many years, and some of that they say is because of the economy, where they're shopping to save gas. They go into a big department store now to go up and down the floors and up and down the aisles, which they didn't like to do, young people didn't like to do just a few years ago. And then some of it was, I think, related to a change in your merchandise mix, where you have made a more aggressive effort to reach the customers in their 20s and early 30s, and they're coming in. So they are coming in, at least you're getting them to come in now, and then the question you're saying is, what's going to happen? Are they going to act like a 35-year-old in 10 years acts like a 35-year-old who's 35 now? And you don't know that.
Right.
And we don't know.
And the gift registry is a huge barometer for us of how we do with a customer who's at this life stage. And so we pay a lot of attention to the feedback that we get through gift registry, because those are people we would obviously prefer to retain. And in many cases, it's the first time they've come into our store. So I don't know if weddings are up. I know, there's certainly some legislation that has allowed for more registries in our stores that we're appreciating. So, we're looking at a whole variety of different ways to look at this customer. Our kids' business, too, is, especially as we focus on Latino customers, where 1 in 3 have children. And, what are we doing with our children's business to respond to that being a definition of what it means to be millennial? All sorts, I don't sleep a lot.
Shiv?
I think in my case, the 2 key ones that I know of, tomorrow morning it might be something different. But the first is, I'm never really sure whether I'm overselling or underselling digital to the rest of my organization. And by nature and by history, I'm of course bullish on digital, but this is a massive business that I'm in. We make these very large, very big decisions, big budgetary decisions based on what we're seeing in the marketplace. And digital is the kind of thing where it's hard to know, are we aggressive enough or are we getting carried away? And that's always a massive question. And I suppose I'll only know the answer 3-4 years from now.
Right. And digital can mean everything from premiering your new TV commercial on Facebook 48 hours before to some sort of very Foursquare, check-in, 20-something targeted kind of promotion that 99% of your customers go right over their heads.
Yeah, I mean, on the other end of the spectrum, to moving, multi hundreds of millions of dollars ad budget, moving 50% of it online. Are we reaching that point? Should we be doing that in the next few years? So these are big, hard questions, and it's hard to strike that balance.
At the same time, when you just moved a chunk of money back into television for the Pepsi brand.
You're a reporter. We need to discuss your. I'm getting back at him for that water reference earlier. So that's one thing. The other thing that is both very challenging and exciting is, with social and mobile and local and all of them coming very closely together, we now have the opportunity to tie what we do digitally far more directly to sales in a per DMA or even a near field communication, even a tighter window. Which means that's very exciting on the downside. It means my team and we're going to be held to a much higher standard as well. So that's something we have to think about.
Barbara, you don't look like you lose much sleep, but...
Oh, I'm still on Seattle time right now, so I lost a lot of sleep. But, what I think about...
Seattle.
There you go.
Sorry, I couldn't resist.
Sunless in Seattle.
Sorry.
What as a capability lead for mobile at Microsoft, so I talk with, all of our marketers, and I talk with a lot of marketers outside, because I try to burst the Redmond bubble and understand what's going on in the rest of the world outside of the Northwest. And what I get concerned about is I look at how brand advertisers and agencies are organized and how we think. And it's really this almost antiquated industrial age way of being organized and way of thinking. And the reality is the consumer has moved beyond that. This idea of converged communications. I mean, a consumer wants their content in whatever format they want it, whether it's their phone, their tablet, their PC, or their smart TV eventually. And so how we bring campaigns to market has to change along with that. And right now, we're not organized for that. And then there's also this human nature of we get comfortable with how we do things, how we plan our media, how we plan our campaigns. We know how to do it, don't really want to change that, especially the more senior up the chain you go. But it needs to change, it has to change in order to take advantage of these new technologies and to address the new consumer. As you said, that teenager or that young adult or student will have much more buying power. I mean, they have incredible buying power now, but it'll continue to grow. But how they consume content is much different than adults today. And as an industry, we have to change, and we're kind of slow to do that. So I'm concerned that we'll get stuck in that place, and until that big advertiser gets out there and just makes this game-changing buy and huge media splash, we'll kind of keep chugging along and not reach the full potential that all of this could actually provide.
Okay. And now it's your turn. If anybody has any questions, could you stand up and ask the gentleman in the beard? I think we've got mics. Yeah, the guy in the beard with the laptop on his lap. Yeah, if you want to just grab the mic. Thanks.
Hi, could you talk a little about your organizational structures and how they're set up to handle these new types of consumer relationships?
I can start. We are a 60,000 person company. We're massive, and we're organized right now around the customer groups that we're targeting, whether it's small business or consumer. And my team, I sit actually in our global advertising and brand management group. And so there are people dedicated to social now. It's been very interesting. There are people now dedicated to social in our primary business groups. So my group in global advertising that focuses primarily on our campaigns and advertising efforts. There are teams, and we also deal with mobile. There are teams in Open, our small business group, that are similarly focused, our consumer group. And it's been an evolution over the last couple of years. When we started the social practice of the company, there were just 3 of us. But it's such a huge part of our business now that every group in the company has to be educated and has to embrace this. And so those of us who are early evangelists really spent all of our time trying to tell people it's scary, but it's going to be okay, and we have to do this. And I think now we're seeing even our traditional marketing managers on our card products, they are embracing this and understanding how to take digital into what they do every day. So it can't just be kind of a small teams anymore. Everyone has to embrace it.
So about 9 months ago, part of the reason I'm employed in the job that I'm in is that we had a kind of a eureka moment at Macy's and decided that that the whole digital media strategy piece needed to be a part of the brand marketing team. It had been handled, I think, really well by our Macy's.com partners, who, understandably, their focus was largely on the transaction and how they might enable the e-commerce experience, and they were working to connect more with the overall brand and with the store experience. And when the decision was made by our CMO to move it into part of the brand team, and we work very closely in partnership with Macy's.com to put all the plumbing behind what we do. But now we're thinking through whether it's display or search or mobile or social as a piece of the brand, and running it through the same rigor that we would any of our other media spends, any of our other marketing strategies. So it's much more plugged in now to what we're doing in events and branded entertainment because of physically where it sits. And we're also aided largely by our agency, who have really provided the staffing that we've needed and a lot of the insight that we've needed in their instrumental.
And their name would be?
That's MEC. And really helping us to staff up and have the warm bodies that we've needed to execute a lot of things.
So in our case, we have a matrix structure. So we have a global beverages group that handles innovation, brand strategy, and does global brand management. And then each geographic area is an operating unit at the same time. When it comes to digital, we're sort of, my team is half and half. We are sort of part of both organizations. We have global strategic responsibility and then operational US responsibility. We sit in the marketing organization, so one office down from mine is the brand director of Pepsi, a few offices down is the brand director of Mountain Dew, and we all roll up to the same C-level executives and are accountable for the same thing. So we're tightly integrated into the marketing organization.
For Microsoft, if you can imagine, we kind of operate as separate businesses within that, whether it's Bing being its own business, the entertainment group, which includes Xbox being its own business. I'm part of the central marketing group, which we have visibility into all those different business groups, both the corporate business groups and then the individual subsidiaries that are our different markets around the world. And so you can imagine it gets highly matrixed when you start thinking about the different product groups, the different audience segments, and then the different geographies. And within that, we have most of the groups and the marketing teams have people who are dedicated to social. We've kind of gotten the clue there and done that. What we're starting to grow now is more and more people dedicated to mobile within that as well, and then partnering with those social people. Sometimes it's added on to the responsibility for the social team or the social person. At times, depending on the business, they actually add an additional headcount there. Obviously, that's what I'm evangelizing for because I see the growth opportunity there and the work that needs to be done. So someone needs to kind of look at it and develop and execute the strategies and look at it more holistically. So that's kind of how we're organized. The central marketing group will do the global brand advertising for some of the larger brands within the company, as well as any Uber brand, Microsoft brand level advertising and marketing that you'll see. But a lot of marketing and communication happens at the subsidiary level and at the business group level as well, so it can get pretty complex.
All right, got a question all the way on the other end of the room, the gentleman in the glasses. Yeah, you can wait for the mic.
Thanks. My name is Rainer Land. I'm Chief Evangelist at MicroStrategy. And I would like to ask you two quick questions. One is, first of all, I hear you, and my feeling is that still the whole industry is in a broadcasting mode. So we are broadcasting messages. Don't you think that due to the social, mobile, cloud, but also the trend of big data, especially if it comes to Facebook, for example, that this is changing the whole game? Because as a matter of fact, as potential marketeers, we have not to guess anymore. We know what our fans look like. Yeah. So my question, especially to Sif and to Per, is how are you using technologies to really understand what the customer wants, to serve him well, so that we have not to spam him anymore, that we can treat him really as a king, as a customer who serves or deserves our services. So that is one thing. And the second question
let's get the answer to that one first, and then you can ask the second question.
Okay.
I can quickly answer. So for example, in our Link Like Love application in Facebook, we are serving you offers based on your actual likes and interests in Facebook, as well as those of your friends. So it is actually very personalized to who you are, and you can imagine further personalization in the future, so that we are really targeting to you the types of offers that since we know everything about where you spend, you can imagine a world where that becomes, that married with your social graph could be very interesting for us.
One other quick example along similar lines is we're now using our data about our consumers and their preferences, not with us, but in the broader pop culture ecosystem, to influence what type of deals we strike with celebrities. So we can know that, X percentage of our consumers like, I don't know, Rihanna more than they like Lady Gaga. And it's a significant enough percentage for us to think about maybe doing something with her. I mean, I'm giving a hypothetical example, but that's absolutely how we're using the data. It's massive from an insights perspective. The challenge we face, though, and I think there are two separate issues here. One is when we look at digital, time spent is moving online, all of that good stuff. But when it comes to social, local, and mobile specifically, and when we think about moving out of a broadcast metaphor, which I think we should, we face a challenge in terms of scale. I don't think everything, so like social media is at mass scale, social media marketing is just about getting at scale. And when it comes to local and mobile, we still have a way to go. So those are some of the challenges.
Because I think there was an example with Pepsi where they spent last in 2010 focused on the cause-related marketing program, the Refresh project, and dialed down their mass media spending significantly. And lo and behold, for the first time in history, Pepsi is now the #3 soft drink in America. Diet Coke is now #2, and suddenly Pepsi is now spending significant amounts of money back into the mass media, like with this X Factor partnership. So there's a lot of pulling and tugging to go, particularly with we're talking about mass brands who are trying to behave in a micro kind of a way, but at the same time they do have larger needs when they're in 1 million stores. And your second question, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Oh, so,
yeah.
Thanks for your comments. The second question is related to this. MicroStrategy has developed a gateway for Facebook, so you can access the data in Facebook, and depending on the
preceding was a commercial message sponsored by MicroStrategy. So what's your question? You have a product you're trying to sell, and what's your question?
Very much related with this, data privacy. So Pepper spoke about data privacy. do you not think, we did some studies in Europe about data privacy, and what we figured out that data privacy and service are two sides of the same coin. As a matter of fact, only if I know my customer, if I know his preferences, I can do and serve him in the most appropriate way. Yeah? So if I don't know him, it's really hard, and we have to guess. So as a matter of fact, we have asked roughly 10,000 people across Europe, so in different countries, and they all said, look, we will give my brand the data, so we allow even to get the complete token, so he can see what I'm liking, which television shows I see, and so on, when I get a return, and the return is a world-class service. So the question is, what is your experience in regard to this? Because I think that the marketeers in the world are really missing a huge chance to make this clear. I can only serve you well when I know who you are and what you have and what you want. Yeah, so I would like to give the question to you. How do you feel about this?
I think you're absolutely right, and I think that that's a big foundation of what our company is built on, whether it's how we provide customized membership rewards offers to you based on your redemption history. That's providing very specific value to you. Or the link like love example that I gave earlier that's based on your social graph and your interests. And it is a give and take of you have to trust us that we're going to do the right thing with your data, and I think we do that by never ever compromising your actual security, but using that data that we learn about you to give you the best possible offers and pairing our best merchants with you. So I do think there is, I agree with you that there's a give and take, and I think all the data out there definitely supports that.
Okay, other questions? We got time for a couple more. The young lady over here with the blonde hair who's raising her hand and she has a black top on. Yes? No, this one over here, sorry. This blonde in the black, not that blonde in the black. You're next. You're next.
My name is Joanne Peretz, and I'm a digital marketer. I have a question, I think, primarily for Macy's, and that is, are the manufacturers that you work with, that is those companies whose products you sell in your store, getting as engaged with you in mobile, in social programs or promotions to drive sales of their products in your stores?
Many of them are, and I would say, the brands where we've given priority are the ones that we carry exclusively. So whether it's Rachel Roy or Tommy Hilfiger or Martha Stewart, the categories that we are incredibly invested in also as a part of our whole brand communication and our branding campaign is where we focused our efforts. So we launched with Ralph Lauren a new brand called Denim & Supply this for fall, and we really looked at social and mobile as well as a significant display campaign as a huge component of launching that to a younger consumer, and they were great partners to us in doing that. We talk about whether RFID technology becomes a greater part of what's going on with the product in our stores, or whether the content we're creating around QR codes and pushing out how-to videos, where Bobbi Brown was enormously successful for us. That's something that our consumers, when I think someone walks through the door at Macy's, they think about Macy's the box, but they think of it as a container of a lot of brands, and that for our overall master brand to be defined, it's also it's a sum of the pieces. So we need to be segmenting out and looking at how the pieces come into play as well.
Okay, and then the young lady behind you there. Yes.
You're so good to me. Carrie from Millennial, thank you guys for your business. What else can we give you to better sell Solomo internally? Data, pictures,
Tickets to the Book of Mormon.
So I think half of it is our responsibility in terms of taking that bet and seeing how it plays out. The other side to it is, I think it's all about the science of does it do enough to drive brand health? Does it do enough to drive sales? And I'd say it's a broader digital challenge as well, because digital is held to a higher standard. But I think that's what it comes down to. I think the massive opportunity is that, I can tell you this specific DMA we're struggling in. we'll devote X amount of dollars, and let's look at the results 2 months from now. If the results are special compared to running a display campaign or something else, we'll do more. So I think that's really the only way to think about it. Yeah, but you tell us.
We have time for one more question, and we're going to take it from this side of the room, the young lady over there. Another blonde in the black. Yes.
Hi, Stuart. How are you? Diane Silverstein. Hi, I'm Diane Silverstein with Sage Collective. What are you seeing as the next new technology? I know the buzz has been QR codes, and you were saying, Pepper, that you were looking at them 1.5 years ago before you had started adopting them. What are you seeing now as coming up on the horizon?
We're really interested in RFID, and because we have physical spaces, and it also allows the customer to be a lot more passive and for us to take content and get it into her hands without her having to take action of opening an app or scanning a code. And so, we're in the very, very early stages of figuring out what that means. And, I don't necessarily envision a Macy's in 3 years where people walk in and their phone completely lights up because the devices aren't out there. But, I think we're anticipating that being the next way to, because, and it's not to say consumers are getting lazy, but I do think we're all getting so saturated with information that what we have to do to get to it is becoming more and more labor intensive and prohibitive. Consequently, things that can deliver it in a way that, again, as marketers, we're absolutely obligated to make what we deliver relevant. Otherwise, we're the spam kings, and nobody wants that reputation.
One thing I'd say, I think that's absolutely has immense potential. A little less so for our business, maybe, but immense potential. The other for us, I think, in the next 3 years, is going to be augmented reality. Because it's going to add a whole nother, literally and figuratively, another dimension to social, local, and mobile as well. So especially for our brands where we're about participating in culture, having fun with our consumers, it's going to do a lot. And Stuart, I'm going to catch you offline about your Pepsi Refresh comment.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I am in the wrong seat between them. I took it out. But I would agree with that. The technologies that will help consumers connect their physical world to their digital life, whether it's augmented reality, 2D barcodes like Microsoft Tag, and technologies that we probably have not seen yet. I mean, there's still so much more innovation happening. But I think at the core of it will be those things that connect your physical life and your digital life and make those seamlessly work together. And those will be the ones that we'll see grow and create great marketing opportunities as well.
Thank you. Our time is up. I wanted you all to give a big, big thank you to this very informative, very interesting panel. And thank you all for coming, and happy Advertising Week.
On behalf of AWNY, Guy and I would like to thank the panelists, Pepper, Jennifer, Shiv, and Barbara. And you all bring unique insights on the topic to the table. As we evolve how marketers use these 3 mediums together, we look to your brands to lead the way.
Lastly, we want to thank our esteemed moderator, Stuart Elliott, esteemed advertising columnist from New York Times. Thank you so much for your insightfulness, your thoughtfulness, and taking time out of your busy schedule to join us this morning. Thanks so much, guys.